Hi, it's Doreen Marshall. I'm the Vice President of Mission Engagement from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I hope everyone's doing well today, and thanks for joining us for Instagram Live. We are going to be joined today by Charlotte Glasser, who will be with us in a moment. As you can see, I'm wearing my Real Convo because we're going to have a real convo with Charlotte. And just so you all know that Charlotte is one of our AFSP volunteers. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, Doreen. Thank you for having me.
I was just introducing myself to the group and also letting them know my pronouns are she and hers, and was wondering if you might take a moment and introduce yourself and maybe say a little bit about how you got involved with us at AFSP.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be able to sit down with you and talk during such an important month and during such an important time. My pronouns are her and she. I'm just really interested in telling people and connecting with people that are also part of this community. I originally got introduced to the organization from a friend of mine who is in the South Carolina chapter. She recommended me to be on a blog or to contribute to a blog post, and you can find it on afsp.org. Did I get that correct? Because sometimes I mess up URLs. And I'm really proud of it. It went up on June 5th, and it's really just highlighting mental health and Pride Month and everything that's going on right now in the world in general. It was posted, it was written, in May. So a few of the things that are happening in today's climate, I would have liked to touch upon a little bit more in detail, but because it was in May, it was primarily focused on just mental health, my own experience, and Pride in general.
Yeah, it's such an important time right now to be talking about mental health. There's so much happening for us. And I know particularly you and I have spoken in the past about how mental health kind of intersects with what's going on for you right now, but also for lots of folks. We're kind of adjusting to this new phase in the pandemic, but also lots of things happening in the world that are getting our attention. Wondering how you've been doing, just kind of lots of events, things opening up, things closing. How have you been over the last while?
It's been a mixture. I think when things initially started to get more serious and we were pulled from work and then quarantine began, I was having a lot of anxiety around feeling lack of control, feeling claustrophobic, not knowing how long these things would last, fears around getting sick, family members and friends getting sick. Just the unknown really kind of set me into a bit of a tailspin. Luckily, I had a lot of support in place in order to figure out how I could better adjust to the circumstances. I immediately got my prescriptions for my mental health medications filled, and I got them filled for as many months as they would allow, because I was afraid if we were not allowed to get to a pharmacy, or if I was afraid to go to a pharmacy, I wouldn't have all my supplies. So that was the first thing I did. Once we found toilet paper, pasta sauce, ice cream, and all the other things that I need to be my best self, I could calm down a little bit, because I felt like even if worst case scenario, I was prepared to make sure that I was self-caring in the areas that might make me the most anxious. So that was what happened initially. As things have progressed, I've actually been feeling almost better than usual, because there's so many less factors that can affect me. I have a little bit more control over my routine. I think the harder part for me is going to be adjusting back to the way things were before, and some of my anxiety comes from that unknown as well. And I've gotten so used to connecting digitally, the comfort of my home, the comfort of knowing what to expect each day. In a lot of ways, I have been really lucky that this experience, even with its highs and lows, have also given me some time to be with myself and really understand what triggers me and what comforts me. So it's been a unique experience. There's been bad days where I felt a little bit more stressed, a little bit more anxious, but again, I'm still in therapy. Telehealth for me, and I think a lot of other people with certain health insurances, is being waived any kind of co-pays, and that's amazing. Same with staying up with my psychiatric medical advisor who does all my prescriptions. explaining how I'm feeling, just to be monitored and ensure that the medications that I am taking to kind of manage my symptoms and everything that isn't just my everyday norms, is not just me dealing with it, but there's another person to give me perspective and to just kind of keep me aware of what's going on and if there are any great changes that I might not have noticed.
It's so important what you're saying to kind of, I hear you saying you took some proactive steps when this first started of making sure kind of the basics around your mental health were taken care of, like making sure you set up telehealth to keep your therapy appointments going, make sure you got medicine, toilet paper, kind of focusing on those things that you could have an impact on. So, you know, which is so important when we're feeling anxious, you know, to separate out what's within our control and what we can influence versus what we can't. Um, Tell me a little bit about how you've been staying connected during Pride Month.
I mean, this is such an important month for everyone who identifies or is an ally of the LGBTQ plus community. And it's so hard with all the racial injustice that's happening, the fear globally about health and safety. Pride has been such a massive part of my life, both professionally and personally. I came out in 2008, and I've just been engulfed in this community ever since. As soon as I recognized how I could live my most authentic, best life, I really put myself in a number of positions to be surrounded by like-minded individuals. And during that process, my anxiety, my mental health caused some conflict for me in that area. And I recognized that I didn't want to go to the parties to meet girls, to be part of that community, to dance with my people, but I wanted to be there in a way that made me feel comfortable. So I ended up working at a lot of these parties. And that was my way of dealing with the crowds and the unknowns, because I had kind of an all access pass by being an employee or being a staff member of these events. And it made me feel more comfortable. You know, it's kind of like as a go-go dancer, which I also did years ago, you're up on the platform, you're kind of like away from everyone else. It's your personal space. And that made me feel a lot more comfortable than getting into the crowd. As years progressed, I became a producer. And so I'm thinking about a lot of the professional contacts and networks that I'm in and how this is affecting them. I'm thinking of my friends, my POC, Black and Brown friends who are being affected. And I think with Pride and the origination of it being a riot, there are so many overlapping topics, issues, feelings around what's going on, especially during Pride Month and in these quarantine times and all of just the political lenses that are taking place. So without getting too into it, I think it's just been really interesting. And I felt guilty that I felt a little bit of relief around the Pride events being canceled this year, because my anxiety was in such a place that I wanted to be part of Pride, but I also felt like it was going to be really hard for me to push myself to go. And I didn't want to disappoint myself or any of my connections that would also want to be there and celebrating. And I didn't want to not celebrate anything or be part of anything that is important politically or just for a community standpoint due to anxiety.
I mean, this is so important what you're saying. Like, it's kind of like this idea of one way we take care of our mental health is by like kind of taking our own temperature a bit around what am I comfortable with, what am I not comfortable with, and kind of gauging where our support lies. And so one of the things I've been thinking about during the pandemic is that, you know, lots of us were in our house with other people or in our apartments with other people. And for some folks, particularly in the LGBT community, home may not have been their safest place, right? And so I guess I wonder, you know, what thoughts you have about ways people can stay connected to the larger community that they have if staying at home doesn't provide that naturally. You know, I'm mindful of that particularly for many LGBT individuals, their safe community may not be who's in their home.
That's really true. And it's a difficult topic to get into, because it just breaks my heart that the people that are part of your family, whether it's blood or otherwise, might not understand your identity and your true self. And so I'd first want to like just you know, take a minute and show solidarity with those folks, because that is just really a challenge. And in this circumstance, it just makes it that much more difficult. So I'm really thinking of those people, and I think myself and other allies, leaders, members of the LGBTQ plus community should be resources that these people who are feeling alone, maybe they're with their families and feeling alone, maybe they're feeling alone just in general, even if their family is a little bit more supportive or completely supportive of their identity and self. You know, we're here, like, let's talk. There's people in addition to me, I'm just using myself as an example, that will take your DMs and be your pen pal for as long as you may need, because we're here for each other. That's what community means. So I'm hoping that finding resources, connecting with the resources digitally that you already have, whether it be friends or even just, I know that social media has been such a great opportunity for people to connect in a cyberspace in different locations. You know, I'm coming from Boston, Massachusetts right now, but I'm talking to people on here and to you, Doreen, in a completely different place. And so what a blessing that we still have this ability to speak and for other people to be part of that conversation. So finding the people you already have and finding new people, joining different groups. For all of the negative things that come with social media, there are so many positive. You just have to utilize the resources that are available to you and explore them. So I've been really enjoying for Pride Month, a lot of my DJ friends or DJs I follow doing these Zoom parties, and everybody's on there like dancing together. I think that's really fun and awesome. And I've been really enjoying that and appreciative of having alternative entertainment, which I think should be ongoing for people who are a little bit more nervous outside. But at the same time, I'm trying not to do it too much because I want to make sure I still put myself in more positive positions. Can you still see me? It kind of went fuzzy on my end.
Yeah, I don't see you right now. We do have a shout out from AU87, who's a New Yorker in Springfield. Thought you might find that interesting.
A New Yorker?
Yeah, in Springfield, apparently.
Awesome. I lived in New York for like 4 years. Honestly, my home away from home. I'm going to log off for 1 second and try to come back so I get my video. So I'll be right back. Hang tight.
Okay. One of the things that Charlotte was talking about that's so important right now is that folks really find their network in their community, and it might even be forging some new networks right now, particularly with all of us using technology in this kind of unprecedented way. I'd also wanted to highlight, she talked about this idea of where we are around diversity and racial justice and equity in the world. And so I'm really mindful that particularly the LGBT community knows the fight for equity and justice. And so I imagine, as Charlotte said, there's some solidarity with what's happening right now in the world for communities of color. And so I mention that because I think Charlotte really highlights the importance of taking care of your mental health, given all of the things that are happening, and really just kind of focusing on what you need, but also being proactive in terms of using technology and other things to connect to your network and those around you who may be looking for the same kind of community. We've spent a lot of time at AFSP really trying to have folks reach out to each other and encouraging folks to find their communities of support, even at this unprecedented time. I think Charlotte's coming back in, so hopefully we'll have her on the line momentarily.
Can you see me now?
I cannot see you, but I'm going to just keep talking until we can. And so one of the things I think that Charlotte also mentioned that's important is not being afraid to let people know what you need, particularly as things are starting to open back up. You know, Charlotte was saying that she was feeling better at this phase than she was earlier in this process of the pandemic. For some folks, that might be different. They might actually feel more anxious now as things are opening up. And so it's just a reminder that not one size fits all, and that we all have our own needs, and it's important that we advocate for those needs, especially right now. You know, I also want to mention that for those of you that are tuning in from around the country, I see Cupcake Mamas out in Louisville. Hi. That's a nice distance away from us. We also have our AFSP chapter out in the LA area. No, I'm sorry, Louisiana. Sorry about that. As well as some others that are joining from around the country. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, where I reside, but I work for our New York office, and this is my home office here. So like many of you, I've been inside for a lot of this, and things here are starting to just open up. I just want to talk a little bit more about just finding your own community right now and the use of technology. We are in a time where fortunately we have lots of technology at our disposal. And I think that makes for a really interesting discussion around how we use technology, whether it's Zoom, and I've been on lots of Zoom meetings, so I know that Zoom can feel like a bit much at times. But whether it's Zoom, FaceTime, Skype, or any other things, just to know that you're not alone and that there are folks out there who are also looking to connect and to connect as a way of taking care of their mental health. So I'm checking in with the crowd. I don't see Charlotte joining us again. So I'm going to give a shout out to Chris. Chris is tuning in about walking for AFSP, and I really appreciate all of you who advocate for our cause in different ways. If you're not familiar with AFSP's walk, we just had our Out of the Darkness walk virtually this year, and we do community walks around the country, many of which are virtual right now. So shout out to Chris. So glad for those of you that connect to us in that way, because it does make a difference to have a community. And all of us are in this together in terms of our mental health. So taking steps to take care of yourself, to not be afraid to ask for what you need, to seek out treatment for sure, if that's something, and Charlotte talked about being proactive about that. You know, we're all having to problem solve differently these days. And I think some of being proactive in terms of problem solving around what you need for your mental health. So whether it's if you're on medication, making sure you have refills, but also things like exercise, getting enough sleep. We talk a lot in psychology. I'm a psychologist, about sleep hygiene, and what that really means is taking care of yourself around sleep. So sleep schedules, trying to go to bed and wake up at the same time, certainly trying to you know, get enough sleep, but also doing some of those things like limiting your media intake, particularly right before bedtime. So you know, many of us go to bed and have our phones in our hands, but we know the light can actually interrupt our sleep. So sleeping in a dark, cool room as much as you can. Those things might seem minor, but when it comes to our mental health, sleep is really vital. And when we're not getting good sleep, it does impact our mood and also our functioning in terms of our mental health. Trying to eat right and exercise. You know, exercise really does have a positive impact on mood. And in some studies is shown to really impact mild depression in a positive way. So if you're feeling down, getting out, if you can't get out in nature, but at least getting some exercise can really make a difference. We are continuing to talk here about mental health. And for those of you that are just joining us, taking care of your mental health. We've got a few things. Invincible Ironman said the virtual overnight was great. So glad for that, and so glad that you were able to join us. And, you know, if you did get involved with our cause, you know that many of our events have gone virtual. And I think we're all moving in that direction now of trying to navigate this new reality around what we can do and what we can't do. Let's go back again just to talk a little bit more about taking care of your mental health, because I really think that's the importance. And when Charlotte comes back to join us, we'll make sure she chimes in. But particularly if you have...
I'm here, Doreen, if you want to ask me anything.
Oh,
I don't
great.
know if anyone
Perfect.
can see me, but I'm here.
I can't see you on my end, but we'll just keep talking. Oh,
All right, great.
they can see you. Other folks can see you. So, Charlotte, I was just taking some steps around how to proactively take care of your mental health, and I mentioned sleep, exercise. What sort of things do you find help you in terms of taking care of your mental health? Is there anything you'd recommend? Oh, I think we lost her. So, well, she's certainly going to chime in. I know she and I have had these conversations and we've talked about these things. The other thing I would just mention really quick, and I'm just looking in the comments too, that some of you may be wondering about how this period of time will take care of your mental health and how you might, what the long term looks like. And one of the things we know is that being proactive about your mental health also helps with your resilience. So the more you can do to actively take strategies and take steps toward taking care of your mental health now, it's going to fare better as this unknown period continues. Charlotte, I was just wondering before you cut out, if there's things you're doing proactively that you found help you with your mental health. I was mentioning sleep and exercise and those different things. Did anything come to mind that's worked for you that you want to share?
Yeah, for me, a lot of my anxiety comes around like the unknowns. And so in this climate with everything going on outside of my house, when I am here, I'm trying to keep my routines. It helps me to know when to expect what. So I try to go to bed at least around the same time. I have a bedtime ritual. I do crossword. No matter what time I go to bed, I got to do my crossword. Part of my routine. I wake up, I have coffee, I hang out with my dogs. I am doing some exercise. I try to get outside, get some vitamin D. It's nice out here. I'm in Boston, Mass, like I mentioned before, and it's really helping a lot. I talk to my friends on FaceTime, my family, anybody that makes me feel good and understands what topics might be difficult for me and how much to share and how much not to share. I was actually off social media for a short period because I was just overwhelmed with how much information and the differing information from conflicting sources. Let's say, there was something saying one thing and other sources saying another. So telling my friends and family, like, only share with me if it's pertinent, because I'm just overwhelmed and I can only consume so much.
That's a really important strategy to like think about your media intake and news and like, what do I really need to know versus how much the either conflicting information is adding to my anxiety or other concerns. I do want to ask you, when you think about navigating kind of mental health and particularly mental health care, as an LGBTQ masculine presenting female, what has that been like for you? And what's helped in that journey of navigating care?
I think things have changed a lot since I came out, which has been amazing that like just things are moving so quickly in different systems. And obviously there's still a lot of movement to go. It's not a perfect system, but I appreciate some of the efforts that have been put in place. When I first started presenting masculine and really coming into my own, once I, found myself and started living more authentically and comfortably, I didn't know where to go for the doctor. I didn't know how to have conversations with non-mental health professionals when it came to medical care. And so finding LGBTQ friendly resources for that, like the center in New York or Fenway Health here in Massachusetts. When I lived in Mass originally, when I was coming out, I went and saw LGBTQ friendly doctors. And I appreciated that the questions were a little bit more open-minded and outside of gender or sexuality norms. And so it made me feel more comfortable that they understood that there were people that had different needs and that everyone can be asked the same question and it can be inclusive. It doesn't have to be limiting, and yet you can still give proper health care and mental health care. So for me, when I was researching mental health, one, I went to those resources I mentioned, Fenway Health in Boston, the center in New York. I also specified on Psychology Today when I was doing searches or doing Google searches saying LGBTQ friendly. And a lot of times it'll say like LGBTQ issues. And I don't consider my LGBTQ-ness an issue. It's more just how I identify, and it's part of my norm. And so I need someone who understands that there are some differences in terms of, let's say my fiance, who is a feminine, female, cisgendered woman, well, let's say we want to have a baby. It's going to be a different process. So if I'm talking about that process with a mental health professional, they need to understand that process to whatever extent, or at least be comfortable talking about it. That's important to me. That's one of those topics that if I was going to bring it up and I had anxiety around it, I don't want to also have to explain to this person what that means and the difference between our couple relationship trying to create more life or trying to adopt or whatever the case may be, and others. So that can be important too. So I ask those questions when I have the initial conversation with mental health professionals, and I say, do you have experience in working with LGBTQ plus? Do you have experience around my particular form of anxiety, or do you know, what kind of things would you suggest to someone who needs additional coping skills or doesn't have a support network? I want to make sure that they have the things that I'm looking for. You know, if I had the answer, I wouldn't be asking for help.
That's right. That's right.
And I got no shame in my game. And if I don't know, or if I don't feel great, I've learned in the years that I've been dealing with this, which have been since I can remember. I'm now 32. I moisturize, so I know I look young. But I'm 32, and I know that I need to be more open, more flexible, and more transparent in order to feel better. And that's with my partners, friends, family, and any other support personnel that are a part of my team. Because I think it's really important to create a team, and they don't have to be friends. They don't have to be next door. They don't have to be in your living room.
It's such a
Find those resources. That's your team. Call them.
It's such an important piece. And, you know, I think what you're saying about that Barb here also mentions is that we can all get lonely and it's okay. And how do you know when someone in your life might be more than just kind of going through a bad day? Or like, how do you know it's time? I mean, I always say it's important to stay connected, particularly when folks are struggling with their mental health, but like looking also or listening also for things that someone might say that indicate that their thoughts or their mood is a little bit more serious in terms of potential for suicide. So one of the things we talk about is listening for things like hopelessness, or people indicating that they feel the worst they've ever felt right now. I mean, we talked about the differences in how people feel right now with what's happening in the world. Certainly listening for any kind of talk around wanting to end one's life or things like that. Like those are indicators that someone should reach out more than usual. And also reach out and ask directly if the person's having thoughts of wanting to end their life. Because I think what's hard right now is we're all going through, you know, different mood changes around what's happening both in the world and with the pandemic. And it's hard to know when to be more concerned for someone. You know, I also talk about warning signs or things that we should pay attention to in terms of behavior. And so some folks might be isolating more, drinking more, or engaging in behaviors that you think that's not typical for them. And so paying attention and staying connected to that is really important. I'm wondering, Charlotte, when you think about the LGBTQ community, like, are there certain things that you've noticed when people struggle or struggling might kind of put out there, or certain risk factors that you think we should be aware of?
Yes. I don't know that these are necessarily only for the LGBTQ community, but I can speak to that a little bit more comfortably. But I think that these are definitely more broad, in that people who aren't necessarily identifying as LGBTQ might have similar experiences or ways of expressing their feelings that are negative. A lot of times, and I think it's pretty dominant in the news and just in conversation, those who identify or recognize that they're LGBTQ earlier often are afraid of the future as an LGBTQ person being bad, whether it be hard or impossible or they'll never be loved, they'll never be accepted, they'll never be able to present the way they are most comfortable because they're be put in danger. I was really lucky that when I came out to my mother, she was incredibly, incredibly supportive. Her number one thing when I came out, which I think when you don't really know the right thing to say, it's natural to express what you're feeling. And my mother said, I'm just scared that someone who doesn't appreciate you and understand you might try to hurt you for being different. And I think that's natural. I think society today has put so much pressure on us to go with the flow and be following trends, and social media perpetuates that problem as well. There are, like I said, there's so many positives to social media, but find your niche. Don't join one that doesn't feel appropriate. Because if you do that, you're missing an opportunity to be surrounded by positive. Whereas if you try to join a group that you know isn't as open-minded, doesn't have the same values, doesn't appreciate the same things as you, that you're going to probably be met with conflict. But that's not the whole world. That's not the whole population. Your people exist. And I know it's cliche, it gets better for the LGBTQ community, but it does. I was not a popular kid. I was not well received by my peers wearing makeshift three-piece suits from my magician costume box to picture day. I eventually conformed to being feminine and femininely presenting. When I finally realized that all of these instincts I had around women and just my own identity was that I was gay, I knew that now, like in that time period, I was like, I'm gay. I was really comfortable with being gay, really uncomfortable with presenting the way I felt most authentic. I was less concerned about people knowing I was gay and more concerned with them seeing me go from being really feminine to being masculine. And understanding that you don't have to be one or the other. I feel like I'm a positive mixture of both. You know, I have some feminine qualities and some masculine qualities. And for me, that feels right. And so I can embrace that about myself now. But it took a long time for me to recognize that the friends that I had and I was telling and showing this new way of presenting and the way of finding myself and getting in touch with myself, most of them I was pleasantly surprised to see they were so supportive and said, don't let anyone tell you that being different is wrong. Don't let anyone tell you it's weird that you wear boys' clothes. You're you. We love you. We like who you are. Do you like who you are? Because that's what matters the most. And if you don't, how can you explore yourself and highlight those things about you that are positive? Because for the most part, all of us are good. So think to yourself, pick 3 things. What do I like about myself? It can be anything. I like the length of my fingernail bed. You know, I don't personally, it's not like one of my things I focus on, but like you can pick something so small.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
and just find those 3 things and every day remind yourself that even if you only have one thing that you love about yourself, there's always more. And every person in the entire world will find at least that one thing.
I mean, you've said something so important about finding the right fit with a therapist, finding kind of, the right fit in terms of your community that you feel most comfortable and supported by, and that it may not be the first group you connect with, but just kind of keep searching. They're out there. That's why I tell people about finding good therapists. It's like, it's not the first one. Keep trying. They're out there.
You're not going to settle. Don't settle.
Yeah.
You deserve the best. That makes you feel the best. And you just got to find it sometimes.
It's so true. And, I just think of you so much as an advocate, both for mental health and for people who are struggling, but also for the LGBTQ community. And I guess I just wonder, like, how'd you get involved in both specifically mental health advocacy, but then I think even more specifically LGBTQ mental health advocacy?
I'll speak to the mental health aspect first because I think the story is a little bit shorter than my LGBTQ journey. I was struggling in a lot of, I guess they're related. I was struggling in a lot of LGBTQ relationships when I initially started dating women. And I don't think it was because I was in LGBTQ relationships. I think there were a number of factors that were already there that heightened the visibility of my mental health fluctuations that I'd always dealt with, and maybe didn't realize. It took me a long time to recognize and be able to say, like, I have mental health issues. This is, this is part of me. It wasn't an episode, though episodes do happen, that it was going to be something I was going to have to go up and down with and manage and learn how to deal with always. I don't think anyone, whether they have mental health or not, can't say that they haven't had dark moments. It happens to everyone. The thing is that feelings are temporary, and I remind myself of this, and that if I feel bad today, I know that I felt bad before, and I know that I felt better after. And so I try not to sit in that bad moment and try to say, this is going to pass, just ride out the storm. And I remember then that it's going to feel better. And the reason I have that mindset is because when I was having those extreme challenges and then realized, like, I do have mental health concerns that need to be professionally addressed and managed, I had support from friends and family that I reached out to and said, like, this has become too much. It's too heavy. I can't carry it. Can you come over and, like, maybe grab the back? And I just said, like, I can't make myself do this, and I need help. And I got into therapy. I got into a outpatient program to get me on the right medications and to observe how those medications were either helping or not helping so they could be adjusted, because people get really discouraged about how long it takes to find the right medication. And that's fair. It's annoying and it's really frustrating because you just want to feel good. I'm 32. In 2018, I finally found the right medication balance, and I still have to change it from time to time. And it scares me because I'm always afraid, like, one day I'll wake up and the medication might have stopped working. But I also say how appreciative I am that I know what to do no matter what happens. I feel like I really do have a checklist of things to do when things get bad. And that was because of what I learned in that outpatient program, group counseling. That's where I met my friend who's involved also with AFSP. It was like a secret society of like-minded people that I could vent to, learn from, share with, observe, be friends or not be friends. I don't think I ever realized how much it was going to do for me, and that I would carry it with me for years. So utilizing the resources that exist, and there are so many, and then if you don't like one, you just pick another, really helped me a lot. And I think, don't be discouraged. It's a process. You're not going to find the person that you love in one date. You have to go on a bunch of dates. And maybe, there's other examples that aren't thinking of soulmates. That's not for everyone. There is a journey for everybody, and your story is not going to be the same as mine, or the same as your neighbors, or the same as your families. And that's okay. Stop trying to follow someone else's path. Make your own.
That's really well said, and wanted to give a shout out to Barb White, who's talking about this idea of it being a process, and just kind of trusting that if you keep looking and searching, both therapeutically but also for the things that work best for you, that you will find them, that they are out there. And Charlotte, we have a question from Izzy Mara about how things. Wants to know how did things get better for you? Like, I guess the question is kind of thinking about, like, when you first started noticing things were getting better, what was that like? What was the process like for you?
I was misdiagnosed right before I started outpatient, and so my outpatient experience was confusing because I was getting so much from the program, but the fact that I was on the wrong medications and being kind of treated in my independent care for the wrong, whatever they said I had, diagnosis, excuse me, that was really, really hard. And for the next few years, I did not have as much faith in the system because I felt like it had wronged me by misdiagnosing me and not helping. In some ways, it's helped me because I learned new skills and met new people, but in some ways, it set me back. And at the time, I wasn't in a place to be able to understand that it wasn't anyone's fault and that it is a process, and that sometimes being able to find the right thing means finding out what's the wrong thing. And so that definitely was a big thing for me. And then as things progressed and I wasn't on medications, and I was continuing to have issues in relationships and trauma things were coming up for me, and I wasn't realizing what triggered my anxieties, and I was having these huge highs and huge lows. And that's probably why I was misdiagnosed, because it was perceived as one thing and it was another. I have ADHD and I also have anxiety, and what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right.
You know, they kind of are really intertwined and people don't realize that. So for me, being able to come to a place and accept what was going on with me was the first move. And the second move was taking the help that was given and trying new things as many times as it took. And the last thing I think that helped me get better was taking the time with myself to feel everything I was feeling, to observe my highs and lows, and to really pay attention to what coping skills helped and which ones were irrelevant. And I really started adding in those coping skills more often. I know I like a routine. Everybody who knows me knows I'm very open with anyone. Like, I'm sorry if I'm going to be annoying. I didn't take my medication today and my ADHD is next level. Sorry if I interrupt you. It's not personal. I'm not rude. It's part of what I do. Really just being open about it makes me feel relieved, you know, because if I'm ticking or anything, or if I'm super anxious, if I'm about to have a panic attack, I can figure out how to deal with it a little bit better. And my partner, my fiance, has gotten to know me, and I've been so vocal with her that when I do have these highs and lows, she can come in and say, feels like you might be in a low. I think that you're showing some of your patterns. Remember you told me some of your low patterns are like this or this or that. Do you feel like you're doing this or this or that right now? And I'll be like, yeah, you're right. And she'll be like, what can I do to support you so you can get back on track? And then I know I need to call my therapist. I need to make a plan for how I can feel less overwhelmed and take one bite at a time to get back on my feet.
I think that's so important. What you're referring to is about really having real conversations with people, and I'm wearing my Real Combo shirt here. But you know, just there's like a certain level of transparency, and when you're comfortable with folks, whether that's a therapist you're comfortable with or friends you're comfortable with, like really being able to just say, hey, you know, I'm not feeling like myself, or I'm struggling in these ways. And helping someone help you. You know, I tell people, you know, ask for what you need when it comes to mental health. You'll never have a better reason, right? That this is really important. And particularly right now with everything that's happening, I think it's important that we have these real conversations about how we can support one another, and really how we're feeling. I always say, people ask how you're doing, but what's more important is probably how you're feeling, and how you're doing, but certainly how you're feeling. I guess I'm wondering, do you have any thoughts about how, you know, someone might approach another person who they think is struggling with their mental health? Kind of thoughts about, you know, what would have helped you, or maybe how you've approached other folks that seem to have been effective?
When I was younger, I was very opposed to people trying to help me or support me in any context. It was like, if they fixed what was hurting, I didn't like own it anymore. Like, I didn't want them to make me feel better, but I wanted to feel better. It was really conflicting. I wouldn't let anyone. It was like, oh, why don't you try this? It's like, that's not going to work. I have to stay in this negative place. Like, you know, I was really against taking anybody's suggestions. And that, I think, is pretty typical for angsty teenagers, and maybe just frustrated people who are dealing with these things that don't make sense and don't have quick solutions. So I would say be really gentle. Remind these people that you're there and kind of acknowledge what they're expressing, being like, I don't know how you feel, but I'm interpreting this that you need space, but you don't want to be alone. So I want to let you know that I'm honoring and respecting your space, but when you don't want to be alone, you can come back into mine and we can share it. I think that's really important. I think this is all just what I wish had happened. I don't know if there ever was the right response. Now that, again, that I'm more transparent, my partner knows how to take care of me because I had to teach her. She didn't know what I needed, and people don't know what you need unless you tell them. So I try really hard not to be passive aggressive, because I think when I was younger I was, and being like, can you just leave me alone? But really what I'm saying is, can you keep trying? Can you please come in 15 times, sit outside my door, do not accept the fact that I'm pushing you away.
Mm-hmm. So important. So
that's
important.
What I wanted, and I couldn't say it, and I was going to push forever because I was stubborn and I could withstand it for as long as can be, and that's not fair to the people around you. But what you're going through isn't fair either. So be as patient as you can with the people that are struggling, because it's hard for you, but it's hard for them too.
Yeah.
So if they have to be patient with themselves, you got to be patient with them.
That's such a good point. Like, I do think sometimes people also worry about not saying the right thing or getting it right. And I often say, like, you can always go back, right? So, like, let's say you try to approach someone and maybe it didn't go well. You could always go back and say, hey, I know I tried to talk to you last night, and it may not have come across the way I wanted to, but I care about you and I'm concerned about you, and I want you to know I'm here, whatever you need. Being able to, I think, revisit those tough conversations is really important. I think sometimes people are reluctant to reach out because they feel like they've got to know exactly what to say. And
I always tell people, if you don't know what to say, you can always just say, I don't understand, but I want to. And I'm always here for you. I will always care.
And whenever you're ready, I'm here. I'm the person you can talk to. Right?
Nothing's going to change. I'm here.
It's so
I'm always
important.
here, and Barb White wrote something that said, I always felt like they should be able to read my mind, or they could read my mind. And I felt the exact same way. I don't need to explain how I'm feeling. You should just know. Like, everyone's got different trauma and triggers. And if you're feeling like abandoned, but you're pushing people away, you're thinking, you don't love me enough to fight me back for me pushing you away. That was my mental interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you to go away. And if you loved me, you would fight as hard as can be to get through to me. And people are taking you for what you're saying. So if you can't say what you mean, that's okay to own too. Sometimes I can say to my fiance, like, I'm going to say things that I don't want to be lasting. Like, I'm going to say something right now because I'm frustrated, and it's going to push you away. So don't go, but know that what I'm saying isn't how I'm really feeling. I'm just pissed off, or I'm just frustrated, or I'm just having a hard time expressing myself because my emotions are stronger than my articulants. So if I tell you you got to go, know that you got to go, but I still love you. Mm-hmm. And I don't really want you to go.
I mean, this is what's so important, because I think when folks struggle with mental health concerns, sometimes they think like everyone can see what they feel, right? And it's not always so clear. In fact, I think a lot of people end up functioning in a way that most people have no idea what's going on with their mental health. Like, they either mask it or they say, okay, I've got to put on a brave face to get through the day. And And so it's like to expect that other people can read us sometimes it can be an unfair expectation. Although we need them to, right? And so that's
Yeah.
the challenge. But I appreciate what you're saying and just your willingness to share about this, because I do think part of having a real conversation is having these tough discussions about when I'm not feeling well, I may not always say things the way I really mean, or I may not always be clear about what I need. And I think the more we can have those conversations on an ongoing basis versus a moment where things are really stressed and tough, the
Mm-hmm.
better we all fare in terms of getting support. It's really, I mean, what you're saying is so important. Um, I guess I wonder, as we're thinking about this kind of next phase, whatever the months ahead bring, thoughts about kind of maintaining resiliency as we go through this time. I mean, I know for myself, some of the things that applied a few months ago still apply. Like I'll probably still watch my media intake, and I'll probably still be doing Zoom calls and reaching out to folks that, fill up my emotional cups in terms of I feel supported and all of that. I mean, what are some things that you think might help you in terms of looking ahead at the next few months?
Because I can't do anything about what's outside of my house and me, I'm really focusing, and I made a list of things that I could do in this time to improve myself, whether it be my mental strength, my intelligence, my knowledge, my physical strength. Are there habits I wish that I had in my life that I didn't have before? Are there bad habits that I want to get rid of? I'm trying to see it as an opportunity. We always say there's not enough time. There's not enough time. Well, it's a lot easier now to plan your time because there's so many less obstacles or factors taking away from it. So making a list of things that you want to focus on, short term, medium term, long term, and then taking it one bite at a time. I like to make really big lists and then shrink them and then shrink it again and then shrink it again. And then I just write it over and, I just keep it going. And it makes me feel like I'm progressing and achieving the things that I'm setting out to achieve. And that's how I maintain my resiliency, by being able to give myself gold star stickers, without needing anybody else's good job.
Mm-hmm.
Or without, I was working on my lawn. Like I'm not the person who works on their lawn, but when I finished it, I felt like I accomplished something. I felt stronger because I was like moving my body. I was outside.
Yeah.
I wasn't on my phone so much. I like made it look nice. I sent pictures to my friends. Like, look, I'm a landscaper. All else fails, I'm gonna mow lawns. Like, this is super fun. It was just something I hadn't thought to do before, and I wanted to be satisfied with a result that looked different than how it started. And that was enough for me to feel like I was doing something productive. And I had weeks of the next day being like, tomorrow I have to do weeding. The day after that, I have to bag those weeds. The day after that, I have to take the bag I can't carry to the sidewalk. And having something to do each day got me up when I was having a hard time, gave me distance from my phone, things like that.
So
Find new hobbies that you didn't think before, something you always wanted to try.
yeah, it's like you're on a kind of a path of discovery. And, I was thinking about for myself, one of the things that's coming out of this time for me is that everything got canceled, right? So just like when you're like trying to reorganize a room, you might have to move everything out and rethink it. I know for my own life, there were some things that probably won't go back and probably shouldn't because I didn't have a really good reason for doing them, being committed to them. So thinking about even like social obligations and how, while we all need support, probably believe most of us came into this pandemic overbooked with our own lives, overscheduled, and like, okay, what do I want to be intentional about having in my life as we go forward, knowing that things are different.
What things that aren't in your life now are giving you relief?
Yeah.
I'm recognizing that, just obligations, like you said, they can be work, they can be personal, they can be whatever. I'm much more aware and able to identify the things that make my mental health more triggered, that because my life has changed so much in this experience, so much perspective. And if I wasn't sitting with it and like really being introspective about that, I wouldn't be able to say like, this doesn't fulfill me, or it could be detrimental to me.
Right.
How can I don't think about, like, let's talk about money situations. I don't think about, I can't afford it, I can't afford it. Instead, I think, how can I afford it? And I do the same thing with my mental health. Like, I can't do it, I can't do it. How can I do it? What do I need to be able to do it? And that gives me purpose. I got to go find my resources.
Yeah. Yeah.
Courage.
I mean, you know, it's important. Like, I think all of us, and I do want to take a minute and just talk a little bit about some of the resources AFSP has for folks right now around their mental health. Certainly, we put together a lot of resources in what we call our COVID-19 toolkit, which is on our website, and it's got writings and blogs and different information about protecting your mental health, taking care of your mental health going forward. And a lot of the things that are mentioned in there are also things we've talked about today. You know, a lot of our chapters have, the programming's gone virtual. So for folks that are concerned about a loved one or just want to learn a little bit more about mental health and suicide and mental health and COVID-19, our chapters are hosting virtual programs. They're free. If you just go on our chapter websites, afsp.org/chapters, you can find your chapter, find when they're doing programming, and just log on. And, you know, as things reopen, we're evaluating community events, but we also have support for those who have lost someone to suicide. So if that's something that anyone that's tuned in today that has experienced either pre-COVID or during this time, just to know we have lots of resources for those experiencing suicide loss, including our Healing Conversations program. And you can learn more about that on our website as well. You know, I'm wondering just if in closing, if you want to just say a word or two, Charlotte, about what you've done with AFSP and just how it may have helped your or impacted your mental health.
I really appreciated getting connected with AFSP because of all the work that they do everywhere to help the demographics that really need to have community and support. And by doing that, I recognize that AFSP has created additional communities. And maybe taking those communities that are going through so many hard experiences and feelings and turning them into new perspectives or transforming them into maybe positives. And I think that's really important because even like we were talking about before, when things are bad, there's also things that are good. And if you focus on one and not the other, you're not going to be completely fulfilled. You know, they're happy is not a consistent state. It's just like all the other emotions and feelings, and there is none that is even. In my opinion, there is none that is even. You have to feel all of the feelings, and you got to appreciate each of them and find what you can appreciate about them. And the resources that AFSP has on their site and in the blog posts, in addition to mine, were so interesting and so helpful to add to my pool of team and of skills and all of that. And it was just, I recommend to anybody in any aspect of mental health or not that they engage with AFSP because it is so beneficial just to humankind.
That's terrific and so important. You know, I want to thank everyone that joined us today. We had a great discussion, and especially thank you, Charlotte, for your insights and for being vulnerable and just having a real conversation. You know, I think it's so important right now that we look out for our own mental health and each other's mental health. And so if you know someone who's struggling right now, this is the importance of having the real convo that we've talked about. And whether it's reaching out through a mental health professional or reaching out, you know, through the crisis line, finding ways to connect people to support right now is very important. But it's also important that we ask each other and take care of ourselves when it comes to our mental health. I just want to thank you for the conversation today. It was awesome, as always.
I hope we get to do it again. I always enjoy talking to you. I could do it for hours.
And you know, for those of you that are interested in getting involved with AFSP, find your local chapter. We're doing lots of programming online right now, so hope you'll join us. And I did want to say just in closing that if there's, you can always reach us either via AFSP National, this Instagram page. And Charlotte, I know that you wanted us to share your handle. It's at CB Glasser, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Charlotte's inviting anyone to reach out and make contact with her as well. Great conversation.
Let's
So,
keep it going.
let's
I
do it.
appreciate you and everyone who tuned in, and let's just keep sharing our wealth, right?
Awesome. So thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.